This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, wonderful. This is Sarah. And have you ever asked yourself the question, what am I going to be when I grow up? Or what am I going to do when I grow up? And we thought that we would have that figured out by, 23, 24, 25, or at least 30, or 32, or 38, or 40. And then what has happened, as my guest Michael Schoettle knows, and as the whole world knows right now, we are recording this in the middle of what we are calling the Great Resignation. And so many people are confused about what their next steps are. And so our guest, Michael Schoettle, is here to help us answer the question, what are we going to do when we grow up? How are you, Michael?
I'm doing well, thank you. And nice to talk to you, Sarah. Yes.
Happy to talk careers. So you wrote a book on this, right?
Yes, I have. And I might say that I think the most important thing in deciding what you want to do is have a good understanding of who you are. Without that, you don't know how to navigate. It's not what other people think. It's not how you can make the most money. It's who you are and what's important to you. And, well, looking at that a little more deeply, your values are the core of who you are. So you would be well advised to take the time to think through what are your core values, what is most important to you, whether it's integrity or caregiving. It could be many things, and it's none's better than another. They're just different. Each has their own core values. And then the cultural values. You were grown up, the family had certain values. You may know it, but I may not know it, but many of your current values are derivatives of that. In some cases, not so much, but in other cases, quite a bit. So knowing who you are is very important, not only so you can figure out what you want to do, but where you want to work, because you only work with people who have the same values as you do. Then you connect well with them, you understand them more easily, and they understand you, so you can form deeper relationships and accomplish more and feel better about where you are and who you are and what you're doing. So that's a quick overview.
Well, yeah, and I think what's really important to point out is the idea of skills, like knowing who you are in regards to skills, okay? Because
Yes.
if I was getting hired, like let's say I went into corporate, okay? So for me to say, okay, I'm a podcast host, they're going to say, who cares, right? If I'm a writer, who cares? But if I say I'm a great communicator, I have a best-selling book, I had a globally ranked podcast, that is a skill that helps me know myself, but then also helps me sell myself in interview, right?
Yes, I would say rather than skill, I would call what you have as a competency.
Okay.
So there's many things to be a good communicator. You have to be a good listener. You have to be able to articulate well. You have to be able to understand and relate to the person you're talking to. I'm not telling you about communications, but those are things that are important. So I agree with you that that you're better off doing something that you're good at doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as hard as if you get something that doesn't really work for you. So as part of figuring out who you are, after you get a good sense of your values, then you start to think about what can you do well. And I think how you process information is very important. People process by listening to others. Others want to talk about it and then clear out their ideas. I have a son who only wants to talk about something as he tries to figure it out. And it drives me nuts sometimes. It used to drive me nuts because he'd have some crazy idea. I said, oh, no, don't do that. And the next morning he said, Dad, I had a good talk with you. I've decided not going to do that. I didn't tell him not to do that. He just figured it out. Whereas I like to go off by myself and think about something and then come back having thought about it and discuss it. So how you process is important. And your competency, there's Myers-Briggs, you may be familiar with Myers-Briggs. They have a very good tool for somebody to figure out how they process, how they communicate, how they listen, how they deal with information. So by doing that first, you have a better sense of what you can do. Now, it doesn't mean you do exactly what you do the best. For instance, I'm an engineer brain. When I think in terms of strategy and modules, I can look at bank statements and understand what they mean. But I'm most interested in people and how they relate to each other. I majored in English because of that, because I just wanted to, it was not psychology, it's a matter of your heart and how does it relate to others and how do you get along? So that's where I felt my life, not my number one competency, which is mechanical competency, but in interpersonal relationships. So therefore, you have to be good enough at it so you can learn. And if you work at something, you can be much better over time. So I was able to learn a lot, especially one-on-one communication.
Well, I'd love to point out a couple things because I think a lot of our listeners would be uncomfortable talking well about what they're good at, right? And you and I, you and I think are doing a really good job of demonstrating that right now. You talked about how you processed. It didn't sound braggy. It was like, okay, this is how I process information. I'm good at looking at bank statements. I'm good at this. People are also important to me. I want to see the heart of matters. In a job interview, right? We have to be able to sell ourselves and talk well about ourselves.
Well, yes, but I have another point of view there too with job interviews. Yes, you don't want to, I think you want to let people know who you are, what you can do and what you've done. Job interviews jobs are about accomplishing things. And you relate well to people, then you accomplish things. So what you've accomplished is most important to discuss in a job interview. So they know what you're good at doing. And you want them, and how you work and do things demonstrates your values. You don't have to tell them that you're honest or that you work well with other people. You tell them, here's what I did, and they can make a conclusion of that. That's number one. Number two, though, you want to interview the company to make sure that's a place where you want to work, because they may tell you that they're a collaborative company and it's a wonderful environment, but make sure they really are. Ask how they make decisions. Who's in charge? If something goes wrong, how do they deal with it? Because you want to make sure that if you join the company, it's the right place. And too many times people think, oh, I'm going to get a great salary with that job. And I like the title. I'll go work there. And they get there and it's not so good because they don't have common values. They really didn't understand where they were. So I think it's important to be who you are. So if it's not going to work out, they know ahead of time.
MIT recently did a survey within the Great Resignation. And so 24 million people left their workplace in 2021 between April and September.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
34 million people surveyed said they left because of a toxic work environment.
Interesting.
Right? But it completely aligned to what you're saying right now, because if you don't know your values and then you don't go into a career and a company that shares your values, it's going to feel toxic.
Right. Yes, definitely. Very good point.
Well, and I really want to point out something else you said. Sorry, I want to make sure everybody's hearing some of the things you're saying. The decision making.
Sorry, my phone's ringing.
Oh, you're okay. Asking about who makes the decisions. I thought those were really good questions in regards to interview process, knowing that you're interviewing the company, knowing that asking who the decision makers are, asking how the company solves problems. I thought those were just dynamite questions that I wanted to, because I know so many people are concerned about not getting themselves into a toxic work situation.
Right.
Any more thoughts on that process?
Say again.
Any more? I thought those were gold. Your questions. Who makes the decisions?
Oh, yeah.
Who solves the problems? Any more of those nuggets for us?
Oh, well, I would say observe the people, not just hear what they say, but look at how they comport themselves, how they look you in the eye. How do you feel about them? It's emotional too. I mean, that's how my wife thinks. When somebody says something, she says, "Why do they say that? How are they feeling?" I'm thinking, is that true or not? So you want to really do both. What they say is true, and how do they show their feelings? And so I also, if you possibly can, talk to somebody who used to work there, can tell you about the culture there. That's where you get the real lowdown. And you maybe through LinkedIn or some other way, you don't know somebody, maybe you can come up with somebody. Then you can get the different, more independent perspective. But just the questions, observing them, asking how they do things, asking them how, especially dealing with problems or making decisions. And if they say they're collaborative, we'll say, how was it? What was the last major decision made? Who made the decision? What was your role? And what do you like about where you're working? What do you would like to improve if you could? Most people won't tell you the truth, but some do. And they don't tell you the truth. That's a concern also, I'd say. So look for integrity and look for values, other cultural values. Yeah. One other point I'd say is that your preferences about how you like to interact with people can be very different. Some people are very abrupt and want to get on with the program. Other people want to take time and study it. Each is different. So you have to think about how you process. And like I know a guy who is investments, and he's like a tough guy. He wants to make quick decisions. And I don't even tell a story about him because it's a little bit off color, but he's very different than somebody who's a financial planner who wants things strategically and patiently and work ahead. So they're very different cultures, and your own preference on how you like to interact is also a part of who you are and a part of who they are. And that should be a good match as well.
And that can really prevent a workplace from feeling toxic as well. My husband and I work very differently. He's the financial planner and I'm an entrepreneur, right? So he's been working for huge companies, right?
Yes.
He's been like on the Titanic, not that they're going down, but these huge companies, they're globally from everywhere. Well, if I operated my business the way he has operated in business, I would have a sinking ship. But if he operated in business like I have ran my business, he would get fired because I'm a speedboat.
Absolutely.
Right? And we need both. It's not that one is right or wrong.
Exactly.
But working within a culture that fits with your needs.
With who you are.
With who you are. Yeah.
With who you are. Yes. Right.
And having a manager who allows you to operate in who you are.
Yes. Right. I worked at Xerox for 10 years. And I actually worked in 5 different work groups, or almost divisions of Xerox, mostly in the new business areas. And when I worked for a boss who has similar values to me, I did very well. I often got promoted. When I worked for a boss that where we didn't get along in that sense, it didn't go so well. You can see it in organizations. Think about where you've worked in the past and how did you feel about it and why. And that's a good way to do some planning, is to just look at your background. What have you done that went well? And always think in terms of accomplishments in what you do. If good feelings are nice, but accomplishments are really what matter, especially at work, I think.
Well, and I'm thinking about that. My last boss gave me a lot of room to be creative, right? So you could see how that aligns with me. And I had such loyalty to this man. I mean, I just loved him. I actually did not fully start my business until he retired because I just could not. I had just had such loyalty and love for him. And he just he gave me this huge wide lane, and I'd say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. And he let me, and it was successful. So that's the accomplishment, the track record. So then he said, well, we should let her do something else. She made me look good. She made this look good.
That's great.
And it was lovely. And I've worked with other people who are more micromanagers, and I didn't feel as successful under them.
No, right. Absolutely. Yeah. Very well said. And some people want that structure, right? More comfortable in it. And other people like you want to be let free to do what you feel like doing, and you'll do better with it than if you're forced to do something you're not particularly interested in.
And being more loyal to my workplace. Being more loyal to my boss, making my boss look good. I didn't have to have all the credit. I didn't need that. I was happy to give him credit, but It was my last boss. We were like the perfect pairing. We really were. I mean, we had such a good time. And he just,
Oh, that's great.
what are you doing
That
today?
you make another very good point there, though. And some people don't think about that, is to take time and get to know their boss and ask the boss what's important to him or her, and make sure that you're working on something that person likes. And bosses, some are like things in writing. I mean, they like to receive a written report, and other bosses want to talk to you. I worked for a boss that used to bring everybody together at the end of the day for what I thought was a bull session. That really wasn't what it was. He was trying to get a better sense of what was happening with his team. And I never really understood that until afterwards. But it's clearly each boss operates in a little different way, and it's very important that you understand that, how they operate. Obviously, and like you want to work with a boss that and you are on the same page, so to speak, and sync, work well together. Yeah.
Well, other employees, they would ask me like how to talk to him, like, because they could see how obvious the difference in our relationship was versus other, because he came across as very gruff and, stoic and reserved and that kind of thing. And I said, I come to him with solutions. Everyone else is coming to him with problems.
Yeah.
And I'm coming to him with solutions. So he lets me solve the problem and I get to do whatever I want. But what I want to do is make his life better and make.
That's right. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But that was the secret. And I would tell people, I said, you were coming to him with problems and I'm coming to him with, this is the problem. I think I have a solution for it. And he'd say, sure, try it. And, I'm sure people said I was his favorite, but of course I was his favorite.
You earned that from him because he trusted you to be honest with him and to come up with a solution and to think about that. It's not his role, it's your role. And a good boss does that. A good boss delegates to the people working for him or her, doesn't try to micromanage them or tell them how to do something, just tell them what you want done. And then oftentimes you don't quite articulate it well, and the person has to figure it out for themselves, what really is going on here. Yeah. There's one other point I'd like to make about work and life, really. And when people think about their future or whatever, is don't be too concerned about the long term. Think about what you're doing now in the moment and do that well. I think that's important, and not about what you're going to get from it or some goal you're going to achieve. You probably know, I've been involved in the Olympics for many years, sailing. And I was on the team when I was 15 years old. And I crewed with a brilliant scientist, was a skipper. And he taught me a lesson that has always remained with me. And that is, one time we were in the Baltic and it was cold, and I was working on one of the ropes, we call them sheets, that control the sails, and I was having trouble with it. I was forcing it and pushing it. And he stopped me and said, Mike, stop. Look at it, figure out what needs to be done and do that. And that has, to me, enabled me to deal with many different things, because I don't just jump in, I stop and figure it out. And so I think that's important. Also, I'm going to make a similar point. You want to be in the moment. Think about what you're doing now, not some future goal. Then you can do better what you're doing, and things emerge. I mean, like your career, becoming an author. Did you ever think you were going to be an author when you started?
No, certainly not.
Yeah, it just emerges. You don't plan it, and that's happened most careers. Mine certainly. I've got jobs. I was sitting in an airplane flying a long flight, and the guy next to me got to talking, and pretty soon he'd hired me. I wasn't even thinking about working for him, but he was running a program at Loyola Marymount University, and he got to talking to me, and he said, you could teach a course here in my program. And so I created a course in career planning, actually, and coaching. And I had coaches. First of all, it was originally amateur coaches like me who'd never been a professional coach. And eventually we hired professional coaches, and it was a lot of fun. but it came not because I planned to do it. It just evolved. And that's so much how things happen in the real world, I think.
And engineers, I think, do a better job talking about that than a lot of other personalities I've talked to, because we talked on this podcast about some things I do really well. Trust the process is not one of the things I do really well. So now we've switched over to the message I need to hear. But engineers, this idea of kind of failing forward, or just the next step, or the next right thing.
Yes.
I've noticed in the conversations I've had that engineers are especially good about that.
That's true. They have to, because especially if they're working on some particular problem, they've got to solve that problem. Or if it's designing something, they've got to put it on paper. They can't think about some future deal, but what they're doing at the moment. Yeah, they're forced to, in a way. I never thought of that. That's an interesting observation. Yeah.
Oh, I'm obsessed with the decision making and problem solving. I'm obsessed with it, and I love talking to engineers for that reason, and because they are so opposite of me in their processing, and they're so it's such a perfect pairing, right? Because I'll just try anything. It's like, yeah, sure, I'll try that. Sure, I'll try that. So I always have so much tailwind behind me that engineers stop and that type of thing. And
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the engineer approach.
Yes.
You just want to jump in, right? You just jump in.
I've already been in the water before. You're like, hey, where are we swimming? I'm like, oh, I'm in the water. I don't know, but it's so important to have that balance of both. And that's really where the beauty in life comes from. And in understanding it, if you and I are working together and you know that about you and I know that about me, then it's like, okay, which projects are best suited for that personality,
Right.
My former boss, when it was a speech or something, or the media would show up, right?
Yeah.
He was like, Sarah, the news is here. Can you go down and talk to him? He did not want to talk to the news. But as you imagine, I was like, sure, sounds great. And it was multiple times. I was just at work and they were like, the news have showed up. Can you go talk to the news? I was like, okay, and he hated that. He hated that type of stuff. But when it was like safety and structure and protocols, you might guess, Michael, that that's not exactly my strong.
That's what he asked you to do.
No one asked me to be in charge of safety protocols. No.
That's funny. That is funny. Yeah.
But wow. It is. That's the knowing yourself, right?
That's right.
Feeling safe to have those conversations and confident to have those conversations to say, man, if you put me on this project, I'm going to fly high. I'm going to be successful at it. And if it's outside of my skill area, not that we give into things in fear, but just kind of know what suits us.
Yes,
so
yes. What we feel we can do well. I mean, what you feel comfortable doing. I think that's important. That's what you're saying, really. Yeah. And that's true. Yeah. So, and knowing other people, what they're good at. The other thing is the people you're working with, to get a good sense for them, for where they're coming from and what they're good at doing, and make sure that you give them a role that fits what they can do. So, but beyond that, probably you need to agree on what you're really trying to accomplish. Not just the short term, but how does this fit into your operation? Like news, he might say, well, we're launching a new thing. Be sure to make a big deal about that, or something like problem, how to minimize it or whatever. I don't know. But
well, absolutely. And the language I use is kind of the target bullseye is what problem are you trying to solve? Yes. And then within your team, who is best suited to solve that problem?
That's right. Yeah.
In our team meetings with my team, I will literally say, we'll list out tasks and then say, who's best at this? Who's best at this? Who's best at this? Yeah. I'm not particularly administrative, right? It's very frustrating for everyone when I'm doing administrative tasks. But I'm great on the fly, right? In different situations. And when we're all getting to work in our strengths, things feel so much easier. They
do. Yeah. Yep. But you really you have to feel comfortable with the people. your values and theirs have to be, you have to think what's important. But my values, you might say, what's important to the person. And that's really the key, I think.
Oh, I want to say something about that. So what's important to that person, and within your personality, what could be important to you? Yes, you have your long-term goals for the company or business or whatever, but also it's like, it would be very unkind of me to push you into things very quickly all the time. I mean, a value for you would be, let me think, let me process, let me, right? So it could be that too.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And give me time to focus, figure it out. Don't just push me in. Say, okay, Mike, you've got 10 minutes. Tell me what you want to do. No, I actually seem to process overnight. I'll wake up in the middle of having solved some problem or thought of something I needed to do and do that. And so my brain works. And I think that the subconscious mind is a lot more capable than the conscious mind, actually. And rely on that. And I do it by just sleeping on it, so to speak, relaxing at the end of the day, having a glass of wine, reading something, going to bed, and then the mind works on it. And
what are you currently reading? May I ask your current book?
Well, I just finished a book by a guy who spent his life racing cars. He was a Dutch originally, now lives here in California. And his book was all about the different teams he was on, the races he was in. He explained how when he first started, and that would be in the 60s, people were getting killed. They didn't wear safety belts then. The cars didn't have rollover bars. And he was in small cars. Then he got in big Formula. So it was fun to see his life as it evolved. And I know him out here. And then I just picked up another book. I'm very involved with a non-for-profit that helps alcoholic and drug addicted men recover. It's called Beacon House. And it's the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is part of it. It's their basic concepts, but men go there totally broken, and they come out. They help each other get better, and they have therapists. And then they learn jobs, and it takes 2 or 3 years. So, but I just bought a book that I arrived yesterday that I'm about to read about that. So, somebody who went through that. It's very moving to see them develop. It's called Beacon House. It's in San Pedro. Yeah.
Beacon House. Well, that's interesting because both times, I do want to point out to my listeners, both times you talked about why you liked the books, you almost went through that processing, right? Like the process of how racing has evolved, and the process that I just say that to say, well, you're a good listener, right? You told me I was a good listener, right? And I am. You can find these clues to help you understand and communicate well and work well and set other people up for success, and ask for what you need to be successful, which is the very first point you brought up on knowing yourself.
Yes. That's amazing. I never thought of it that way. Yeah, true. That's true.
Yes. Well, Michael, please tell people where they can find your book.
Oh, okay. First of all, you can buy the book on Amazon. It's called Career Change Guide, but you can learn more about the book by going to its website called careerchange.guide. And on the website, I have my background, but more importantly, I have parts of the book. The introduction, you can read that, or you can read the first chapter. Then I was interviewed, sort of like this, and we made a YouTube videos, and they're available on the website. So I talk about the basic why I wrote the book, important values, interviewing, networking. We didn't talk much about networking. You and I did just now.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Key to finding a good company where you might want to work, or an organization you might want to join, because you talk to people and they know you, and they share your values, and then they refer you to somebody else that also is somebody you get along with. And that's many ways, 70% of the time, that's how people get jobs, is through about it from somebody else. So anyhow, that's in the network, in the website, careerchange.guide, or the book, Career Change Guide, at Amazon. Thank you for asking.
Oh, Michael Schoettle, thank you for coming here and helping us figure out what we want to do when we grow up. Awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day and a good luck to you.
Thanks.